Hi, so today we're going to be looking at basically making a map in Warhammer. And I've been learning over the past week or two, I've been learning how to make Warhammer maps. And it's pretty tricky to learn through the resources that are available. Um, but I think that my goal in this video is to kind of demonstrate a little bit how it's done. And so some of the more basic questions or some of the common issues that you might run into, we can get through it and yeah, hopefully make it a lot more clear and get people started a little bit more easily. So first of all, we are going to be following a guide that was created by uh, Waka Waka 3000. As you can see here, um, yeah, we'll be like loosely following this because some of this is a little out of date, but it still is like a gold mine of information. The link to this will be posted in the description. But yeah, but my goal for this video, well, for this, it'll probably be 2 or 3, maybe even 4 videos, will be to make a map completely start to finish, so that the entire process can be demonstrated and yeah, we can have a little bit of fun with it. So yeah, so we'll be looking at this map, this tutorial. We will also be using this program called Terry. Let's show it here in a second. Maybe it's not working. 1 second. We'll be using this program called Terry, and then I'll show you how to get started with that, and as well as a number of the other resources. To start with, this, okay, so that didn't work like I expected. So let me just remove that. Put this one here. Start another one. I'm going to be managing my streaming software today, so you'll have to bear with me to some degree, as well as doing window capture. Okay. And then we are going to look at, yeah, this one. And so, okay, so now it's working. So this is the guide. Yeah, so there'll be a little bit of bumps in here. I'm still new to both the software and the software for working in Terry. And making mods, so there'll be little things here and there, but for the most part I think we can get through this and without too many issues. So anyways, first of all, we're going to be looking at this. There is a Google Drive that has all of kind of the important files in it. There are the things that we'll need are these Warhammer 2 vistas. These create the backgrounds of the maps that we're going to be working with. You need this, the guide. You need this Terry building. So there's some buildings that you can drag and drop into your Warhammer data folder. I might not actually show how to do this, but it's pretty straightforward. You just download this and put this in the folder where you will have your Warhammer. For me, it's located in Steam apps, common Total War Warhammer, and then you just drop it into your I think it's your data folder. So let's see if I have that, Terry buildings, and these are just going to be little extra buildings that you can use. So actually, let's see, maybe it's in your, it says it here in the guide. So let's just look at it real quick. Terry buildings. So into the Warhammer 3 data directory to add additional buildings into Terry for your use. Yeah, so we can just go ahead and download that, and I will just put it in my folder. Move it from my downloads, and then put it into my Total War Warhammer data folder, and I'll be showing that later. It doesn't like that for some reason, but okay, we'll be doing that at some point. We'll also need a program called it's called RFPM, for managing the mod, but we'll get to that we'll get to that later. Yeah, so okay, so what are we going to be doing? We're going to be making a map in Terry. Terry is the assembly kit. Let me show real quick how you can get to it. Let me make a second one of these. So window capture Steam, and then we want this, and then we want this. Okay, window, want this to be Steam. Okay, so I'm just gonna show this real quick that in Steam we have basically it'll be called this assembly kit beta. How we find it, we actually need to at the top here we need to filter for tools. So by default mine wasn't toggled. And then Total War Warhammer 3, and then this will be downloadable, so you'll download that. Yeah. So going back to Terry, let's start with the guide actually. So just a quick bit of explanation, and again, like this, all of this will be shared more in detail later, so you can see some of the specifics. In Terry, you can choose between making a tile map, and making a prefab. The tile is basically like where the battle happens. The tile map is the backfield, or the basically the background, where we sometimes call this the infield and this the outfield, because this is where the game the tile is where the game is played, and the tile map is where it's just where the scenery lives. Prefabs are like collections of objects that are smushed together to become like one bigger object. And so these are sometimes useful, but we won't be dealing with them here. And then usually we make them 8x8 because they play nicely with the way that we generate the backgrounds. And then a default climate, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. Yeah, I'm just making sure that there's no other things here. Yeah, okay, so let's go into Terry. I'll just make sure that we have everything working okay. And let me just real quick post I'll post the link to the stream so that people can find it more easily. And then I'll just throw it in self-promo. And then okay, yeah, so now I've shared it a little bit. Right, so let's go to carry, and then actually I'm going to do the dangerous thing and stream my entire screen. So we have basically there'll be this project wizard. This was the screen that we were just looking at in the guide, and yeah. So today, I want to make this questionable sketch of the map. And my goal is to make, basically I've designed this, designed is a loose term, but I've drawn this up beforehand so I can have like a nice reference. I'm kind of imagining that we have, this would be a domination map. I'm kind of imagining that we have 3 of these kind of ovular hills with, you know, the points kind of arranged in a triangle, some vanguard points on the side and some regular spawn points here, and maybe a couple objects and then some trees. So that's kind of my loose vision for this map, and I want to make it a desert map because I really enjoy desert maps. So for desert terrain, you can set a climate. I've been told that this is the correct climate for like kind of Tomb Kings-esque maps. Southlands, I think it might stand for. But you can see there are all these different kinds of terrains. And you can choose, basically it'll set like the background, or set the, like what kind of textures are default on this map. So like for, I just made a map in Lustria, so for lizardmen, the default textures were like 2 grasses and 2 grasses and 2 kinds of mud and then a kind of tree. So they kind of come with defaults. The default of like the way that the ground looks is determined by what the default climate is. So these are kind of some options, but today we're going to make something in the Southlands, and these can be changed at a later point. We're not going to change this for now. We'll be doing a lot of this ourselves for how we handle the base, but this basically, like, it's worth knowing that below 0 things can get a little funky, so you got to be a little careful about subtracting. But okay, so we are going to start, and I'm going to, it takes a little second to like load the map. And now, so we can look here, but we can kind of look really close, and you can see sort of like this is the kind of the default of how the terrain appears. There's some, and actually let's change the camera to orthographic, and then you can kind of move here. My set of toolbars will look a little different than yours. If you need to find one of the two toolbars, you can go into View and Toolbar, and you can click and unclick these ones for how you want them. And this is like a loose arrangement that kind of works for me, so you don't have to go by this, but yeah. So basically we can see that we have our 8x8 grid, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, a little bit of buffer space around the outside, and yeah, and so this is a relatively large size, and the default size for a lot of these maps tend to be, Waka says in his guide, between 3x3 or 4x4. Kind of, I guess this would be the central 4x4. So today we will make this either a 3x4, 3 down, 4 across, or yeah, or 2.5 by like 3.5 or something. So basically we'll be a little bit wider. If you look back at my picture, a little bit wider than we will be, a little squished in this direction. So I want to make shooting factions more viable on this map. Oh, one thing I guess I didn't say about this too is I want some shallow water in this point, maybe even extending over here. So we'll show how water is done as well. So let me switch to Terry and check to see comments, to see if anybody is tuning in or asking questions yet. Okay, so yeah, so I guess I'll just continue to, can you see my cursor? Let's see. Let's just keep capturing the screen for now, so I know that you can see my cursor. So anyways, we're just looking at some of the tools that we have access to. This is incredibly useful. It took me a long time to figure this out. You can change the kind of camera. So for most things, I'll be using the debug camera. This is similar to the one that you would use in game. Let me just change my contrast for a second. Do that through here. 1 second, just need to adjust some of my light settings because it's a little bright on my end. So I need to find, I have a program that adjusts my light settings, and every time it tends to break every couple days. So okay. And then I just need to turn on that. Okay. So one thing we'll be keeping in mind too, Terry is closed now, that these maps tend to be very bright. So I think when we, let me adjust the settings a little bit more. So the contrast is pretty hard to work with on these maps. So we'll try to do our best to adjust that brightness if possible, but we'll have to see. So yeah, let me just fix this for a second. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind when you're moving in the debug camera, shift, holding the shift key while you're moving speeds things up, and that's a big lifesaver. To pan left and right, we can use Q and E, but holding shift kind of does it really jarringly quickly. The most useful thing is the middle mouse button, the way that you usually do it in the game. That seems to be the most effective way to move the camera around. And yeah, and so one other thing too, if we push the, maybe we'll be able to see this, to zoom in a little bit. If you push G, the G key, then we get the cross, the grid lines, and some of the other like useful things will disappear. And then one last thing that I'll say about like key bindings, pushing the H key brings a height map. So it's all one color right now, but if it was multiple colors, we'll be doing that multiple times throughout we'll be checking this to make sure that everything is more symmetrical. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty much the basics. We'll be working a lot with this tool here, the Paint Terrain tool. This helps us, this will help us. I have it actually very big, 1 second. Let me just, so you can decrease the scale of these tools. Right now I have scattering on, so you can turn these scatters off. It's still very high. I was making mountains with this tool, so if you want to decrease the intensity, you can decrease the size again with scale. You can decrease the flow, which determines the rate at which the things form. So flow, a high flow, for example, we can just look here and we just delete these. So there is a high flow, and we'll put a similar one next to it. That's a low flow. So you can see it's like the rate at which things are placed and how dramatic they are. You can also choose a subtract tool, and I mentioned that a little bit, and you can subtract. It's a little dangerous with relative to the ground, so now we're below 0, which is not a great place to be. And so the way that we can deal with that, so we avoid being too low, is we can do the absolute tool. So let's just actually increase this flow a lot. And this absolute tool sets it to like it maxes out at the height that you determine. So if you want 2 meters, I don't know if it's actually a meter, that was really subtle. Let's actually do like 10 meters and then a very small, so you can see it caps out at 10. Oops. Yeah, and you can Control Z to get rid of things. That's a very useful feature. There's some other functions here that kind of determine, if you look at the thing here, it determines the like the way that the shape looks. So like here, let's do again. So there's let's make absolute again. Let's make it a little more noticeable. So let's just click one time. Okay, now if we increase the roundness of it, you can see it became more round, which means that oops, it means that it like raises away from the center faster. So there's a couple little so let's just bring this all back to 0. Blah, 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 blah. Do the shift. So we can increase the size of this, and we're just undoing everything that we've done so far. Yeah. These are elements of randomness, so they can make your terrain look a little bit more organic. You can blend to absolute, and let's do 30. Okay, so we have these two blobs. We want to smooth between them. That's very subtle. Now it'll raise in the middle. You can kind of see it raises in the middle and it lowers on the sides. But this tool is a little too subtle sometimes, so it's not always the most fun to work with, but sometimes it's really helpful if you have a lot of really pointy things. And you can see it's kind of decreases the gradient. And then erase is useful. So I guess that's similar to the absolute back to 0. And yeah, add is a lot like absolute. It's just a little bit more, let's decrease the roundness. You can also do squares. Yeah, so adding is a little bit like the absolute, except that it doesn't cap out at a certain thing. And yeah, I think that's all that we're going to look at right now. And then while I'm still on a roll explaining some of the tooling, the other probably most important tooling here is, so we clicked on the base here to get into this. We can also change the the ground type. So once we've clicked on the texture, we have like our list of textures here. Actually, let's change this. You can see it's a little subtle. It's a different kind of ground type. The default ground type is this grass one. Okay, and then I haven't played around with these two, but these look to be different kinds of sand in this biome. So their names aren't really the most accurate in terms of like what these actually are. But you can, I'm pretty sure you can also, if you want different terrains from different biomes, or different climates, you can add these in. And then some forest, you need to give it a little bit of time to create. And then it procedurally generates, and then you have forest. And this forest is the kind of forest that will hide units in it. So yeah, so let's just erase this. I actually haven't tried this smooth tool before in the, but okay, let's see. What did that do? Not sure. So we can erase this. Just go back to, again, it takes a second for this to procedurally degenerate. Yeah. So, right. Let me take a quick second to check any questions at this point. Hi, Greenskin. Yeah, I liked the thumbnail as well. Yeah, so this is like the basics of making a map. So right now we have a lot of the tools that we need to make a map, like those 4 or 5 elements. I guess I can tell you a couple more things about, these are the fun parts of making the map. There are other like parts with how do you place domination objectives, how do you define where people are going to play, but these are by far my favorite things, the parts where you're actually making the maps and using those tools, along with using, say, you can place buildings. So let's make some of these things really big. You can determine the scale of them. So you can like place them, some cool things like that. You can hold control to change the angle. So like, let's say that you wanted to meet them at a specific angle. You can place them here. Boop. So you can kind of like start a walkway. Then you can also adjust them. So actually, let's just show, you can click on one like here, and then you can choose this. I didn't even know that it had all of that. You can choose where they go with, and do some fine-grained work with just these arrows. And so let's say that we're just gonna create them all to a certain height. I accidentally made another one, so I'm gonna delete that. And then here. So now I've like started creating like a little walkway, which is pretty cool. It's very easy to, so if you want to select all of these, you can, click on them one by one. You can draw a little circle around them by left clicking and dragging a circle around it. And then one other thing that I wanted to talk about is like the concept of layers. So if you're familiar with like Photoshop, Illustrator, or like, many different kinds of image adjustment programs, there are these concepts of layers, and they just increase your organization. They don't do that much, except they end up being really helpful to like find things later. So if I had like a list of 30 things here, it'd be hard to organize these. So you can, it's a little finicky in this, exactly how this is done, but you use this new logical layer here, and then it'll create a new just grouping of them. So let's just call these walkway, and now we can shift and drag into the walkway. And now you have features like, I want to hide these. So I want to hide, you could hide each of them one by one. Well, now I want to hide them, or maybe I just want to select them. Did it work? Oh, I pushed a button. If you hit Z, it'll zoom you out like that. It's kind of annoying, just as a heads up. But you just got to come back into it. Yeah, so you can select them. You can collapse it. So if you have a lot of different things going on here, you can ignore those. And yeah, we can just delete that entire thing now. Sometimes it's useful to select the parent layer. This would be helpful. Like, I've noticed that it gets a little glitchy for like creating a top level layer. So sometimes you just do that one and it'll pull you back to default, and then you make another layer. You can drag layers into layers like that. So yeah, that's pretty useful. And then let's see, I think I want to talk about now these things. So these things are all available in Tools, Entity Creation, Logical. These ones here are all in Entity Creation, Visual. So you can pull all of these up there, or you can just pin them here. And I find that I use these enough that I like just having them in these locations. In fact, let's even, okay, it wouldn't let me. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, we'll go back to the guide now. We're going to talk a little bit about how do we define like where we're going to play. And let me go, I will put this on the guide. Let me pull that back up. Make sure that it's working. Just double check any questions at this point. So, oh, I've lost my cursor somehow. It's disappeared. It's disorienting. Let me see why that happened. So, okay, screen capture is back. All right, that was a weird glitch. Yeah, so now we're just gonna go, we touched on some of the like fun things. Now we're gonna talk about some of the parts where you where we will be making like the boundaries of the map and some of the parts that basically make the like the domination part of the map work, and how you define like where we're going to play and whatnot. So first of all, we can save the map, and second of all, there's a little tip here about shadows, but let's just save the map, and then we're going to set up initial deployment. So to do that, we're going to be using these logical tools. So the entity creation logical tools. We'll start making deployment zones. Yeah, and so actually let's first make the play field, the playable area. So saving, we're gonna first save this. So file, file save as. We're going to say that the tile set here is STL, and I guess we have a few here. So let's just select, dunes. The name will be, we'll call this, so looking back at my image, there's kind of like a swamp. So let's say like, trying to think of a name for something related to Tomb Kings. Let's just call it imperishable Swamp. We'll have a chance later to change this name. So for now, it just has to be something memorable, and then this will be later something that we'll adjust. So okay. Now the second thing that we want to do, and actually let me just paint for a second. This is a useful trick. So what I want to do is I want to define what's the playable area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want it to be kind of in the middle. So for now, I'm going to, because this can all be deleted later. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for now, I'm going to paint this, and just for a visual guide of where I'm going to put the playable area. So I said that I wanted it, I probably want it to be 4 by 3, or maybe 2.5, let's say 2.5. Let's go for 2.5. So let's just first paint that over. 2.5 by 3. So this is going to be a little bit of a smaller map. So let's just say if I paint half of that side, and then I paint half of that side, what we have now is half, 1, 2, half, so it's 3 across, and then we are maybe a little bit more square here, so maybe we want to maybe do something like, maybe not quite that dramatic. So let's just go here across. Okay, so I'm just trying to eyeball like roughly what the size is. So I might make it a little bit bigger, a little bit more centered than this. But this is a good way of kind of identifying where we're going to be placing things. And then now let's just do, so we go to the, I'll show you where it is in the, so it's here, playable area, but in tools, logical, and it is here, playable area. So I'm going to try to be accurate. It's not always the easiest, but so here I'm trying to be like right in the middle, half, because in DOM it's pretty important to be symmetrical. So I'm just eyeballing right now how symmetrical it looks. Okay, so playable area is now defined. This is the area, this is basically the white lines for where your where play is going to happen. And in fact, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'll make it a little bit bigger than that. So let's say that I'm going to put it a little bit more than half, and then about half in the length direction. So a little bit more than half on the sides and about half in the length direction. Okay, and I'm doing that because the next step that I'm gonna do is make the, I'm going to make the deployment zones. So deployment zones, and now deployment zones. So you can see in tool properties, a lot of times when you click on things, tool property fills up with what your tools are. This case, Alliance ID determines which team we're referring to. So if we do 1 on team 0, okay. So So now we have team 0 there, and you can see it set it in the deployment zone layer. And then you can take the next one, put it to 1, and then let's just define the deployment zone here. Okay, so let's just erase some of this now. I might leave a little bit of it just in case that's helpful for some reason. Okay. Now we have our playable area defined and two zones of deployment. Now I'm gonna make the next, I'm not exactly sure where I want the vanguards right now, so we'll revisit that question in a little bit. But I'm just gonna double check again for any questions so far. So we're good. And now let me let's actually look here for a second at the guide. Okay, so we've created the deployment zones. The next step will be to make the vanguard zones, and we'll do that. So deployment zone is where your armies start. We can make the next step would be to make the next step is to make the vanguard zones. So that's what's mentioned here. But we'll skip that for now. We'll come back to that when the map is a little bit more created, because I don't want to, I don't want to adjust that a second time. So there's a little bit more information here about like how capture points are placed. So actually, let's do that next, because this is pretty straightforward, and I know that I'm not going to change the capture points that much. So let's go back to Terry. On this map, looking back at my beautiful drawing, we're going to put them in a triangle place, and it's going to have this aspect where the third one is a little bit further. I don't know exactly what kind of triangle this is, a isosceles or something. Where anyways, the third point is further from 1 and 2 than 1 and 2 are from each other. So let me just go in, put that back. Let's make for now. So this is the trick that I was saying earlier. You can click on this, go back to the top, then make another top level layer. Sometimes it's a little finicky, so it might save you a little bit of time. So here, going to define capture points. Capture points. So I'm going to click on that. So everything that we make is now in it. Then we go to capture location. Okay, and this is a little bit tricky. That you need to change the importance to score. Domination. Let me just make sure that that is the specific one. So domination points. So he has domination 1, 2, or 3. So basically domination, this determines like which one it is. And we will put them, let's try here. And we can actually click on this, just wanted to demonstrate something. We can click on this and determine in entity properties what size it is. So I think in the guide, Waka says that in general they're anywhere from 80 by 80 to 180 by 180 is the most common size of these. So we're just going to go to 80 by 80. Obviously, these can be determined by you. So in fact, let's even explore the concept of a rectangular one, because this map is already kind of rectangular. So I want to kind of explore, and let's do 60. Maybe not that much. Hold up, let's see. So let's do initial, yeah, we have to change these two. But yeah, so you can change the size of them here, and Waka suggests doing anywhere between 80 by 80 and 180 by 180, depending on like the size of the map. But today we'll consider how we make these rectangular ones. So we'll start there. Then you need to change importance to score, and then restore type to, I think it's, let me just double check, neutral owner. And you have other options here about flag position, some other things that are probably pretty cool to mess with. But for now, that should be good. Okay, now once we move this, so like let's say we move this a little bit, we can, so let's just do, actually, and in playable area, I forgot that we have to do this. In playable area, you see how we have these, I think there's some like default spawn zones that occur. So we're just gonna turn those off. This might be for like FFA settings, but we do not need that. So double checking, we can copy and paste. So I made a second one here. Now let's move it down. So basically what copying and pasting does, let's move this a little bit away, and we can check exactly how far they are away from each other so they're symmetrical, but we'll do that in a second. You can see, so let's call this 0.1. We can call this one 0.3, and then let's just copy and paste another one, and we're gonna put them like right here. So that one would be 0.2. Okay, we can order them, perhaps, maybe not. And we just need to change now so they have all of the correct settings, except for that this one should be domination 3, this one should be domination 2. Okay, and the other settings should be correct now. And yeah, so what I was saying about making the layers, it's really nice when you start getting a lot of these things, you can just collapse that and not have to worry about it. So a question you might have is, are these two symmetrical? Like, are they the same amount of distance? We know that they're the same distance left and right because I didn't adjust this arrow, I just adjusted this arrow. You can check here. You can check here with the spacing. So let's just for a second find a tool. You can check with the spacing here. So I guess one way in this specific case we could do is, let's say 60. You can check that the box is like right in the center, and like the cursor is right in the center, or if that's roughly 60, you can check that it's the same size on either side. So the one from the bottom is slightly too far down, but barely. It doesn't really matter if it's so precise, but this is a tool that you can check how precise it is. You have to save. It will auto save, but Control S will save it. Yeah, so now we have capture points, we have the playable area, we have the deployment area, and what we don't have right now are the What we don't have, in fact, let me just move this a little bit to the side, so it's straight in the middle. What we don't have are the vanguard points. So, or sorry, the summon points. I think I'd like to do that later too. Yeah, I think maybe I'll do that in the next video. I have a comment that the mic's a little quiet, so I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Okay, that should be a little better. So, right. So we have 3 points. We have the playable area. We have we're missing vanguard points. We're missing the summon points. But I want to play a little bit more with the terrain now. So I want to show how we do this. Give me a second. Let me just do this. We can right click on the height layer. This was something that you won't necessarily do, but I was gifted this by Waka so that I could make a map with more dunes. Basically, I'm going to import a height layer that will help me make dunes, because dunes are a little tricky to make. They're like, the shape of them are a little bit unique in nature. So he's gifted me a height map. It's a .tiff file that he made in the map making program called Gaia. So actually, let's just see what this looks like. I have no idea how this works, honestly. So let's see. Let's just hide this for now. So actually, let's just do this. So basically, I've hit the H key, which shows the height map. So this, I'll play around with this this dune height map later off stream. I'll probably end here relatively soon. But it lets you see, just a reminder that the H key lets you see the height map, and you can actually see, it looks like, because if we turn off the dunes, so they are doing something, you can kind of see that it's changing the heights somehow. But you can see from the base level now that some of this never got smoothed out, so it might be really subtle sizing. So let's just erase that. Does that work? Sure. Actually, let's just bring it back to 0. I might have done that on the wrong layer. Here, let's just do it here. Erase. Yeah, so there we go. Now we've erased the... Okay, so let's go back to the overall view. We can go to the debug camera and adjust the height. So you can get a sense of like roughly how big the map is by getting low to the ground. And there's also in props, there is a, he mentions it in the guide, that ref group human can show you like roughly how big your map is. So let's just place this will be like a Empire Swordsman. So you can see like this is the size of the map that we're looking at. So if you imagine a formation is maybe something like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's like roughly like maybe the size of a formation in Warhammer. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the sizing for now. I think this is kind of what I'm going for. I might move these two a little further apart. Say we're only a couple swordsmen between the two. Yeah, but that's a really useful tool to like gauge how big your map is. And remember, control will help you shift, and you can also choose precisely here. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there. So that was a lot of the basics for how this is done. Next time, I'm gonna check exactly how this height map is worked with. So let's try turning this off for a second and not erase, but let's try adding. Okay, so there's just something else that I need to figure out about that, how exactly that works. Undo. But so for now, we'll leave it here, and next time we'll start building the terrain. And actually, let's just, before I forget, let me just adjust these a little bit. Let's say we're trying to make them a little bit more apart, and then we can still demonstrate. Actually, let's just delete this because that'll make our lives a little easier in the XY direction. I go back to the orthographic setting to show how that's done. This one I want to be 0.3, and in the entity properties we go back to domination 3. And then let's just double check with the painting tool that, so it was 60 before, scale is here, let's say it's 80 now. So it's a little too, the bottom one is a little further away. So let's just move the top one slightly up. And now we can double check. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna save it here and log off. Definitely feel free to post any questions about what we've done so far. I'm gonna keep these a little shorter, make them a little bit more manageable. And then the next time that we come, we'll work on filling out the terrain and doing more of the fun parts of making the map. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 2. And let me just this one. Yep, have a good one.